Shogun 2's campaign sucks. Don't believe me? Let's jump into a campaign and analyze its mechanics. The base campaign mechanics will be divided into the following categories: province management, character management, clan management, technology tree, campaign movement and design, diplomacy, and finally the realm divide. So let's get started. Province management in Shogun 2 is simple. In fact, it's way too simple. Each region has the castle, and somewhere in your provinces there is a farm. In coastal settlements there will be a port, and in certain special provinces you will get a resource building. These buildings outside of the castle can be raided by the enemy. How do you manage the settlement? It's simple. You can go to your castle and upgrade the buildings on your province. Upgrading the castle grants you a building slot, but it will cost you food. Farms will grant you income and food. On your building slots you can build one out of a few building choices. Besides buildings, you can also manage taxes. Well, you can really only exempt a province from taxation. It's not like Medieval 2 that you can set the taxation for that town. And this is essentially everything there is on province management. While effective, it offers the player little control over the population in the settlement. There is actually no population mechanic, no edicts or policies, no natural settlement or region growth. It is a step back from Empire without the growing town spread across the map, and despite improving on Empire's building system, it's still worse than the freedom Medieval 2 and Rome 1 gave players when building their settlements up, though I can see the value in forcing strategical decisions on the player. Looking at characters, they introduced the RPG level up system. At the same time, the traits and character development of Rome 1 and Medieval 2 that made for a more immersive and natural progression to characters was made much less significant. This way of developing characters was then ported from game to game and made worse at every turn. I also think that the RPG level up system makes no sense the way it is implemented. For example, a general that wins field battles will level up, and the player will then be able to solely develop the character to become a good administrator. It is better in terms of player choice, sure, but not really great for immersion. Here my choice would have been to make several skill trees representing the different things a general can do in the campaign, and allow that general to advance on the skill tree that they have been practicing. So administer a settlement, level up administration, fight siege battles, level up siege ability, and so on. Still on characters, there's the family tree. I've got no complaints here other than I can barely do anything with it. But then again, in Medieval 2 or Rome 1, you could do nothing with it other than select the next faction leader. While here, you can do that and also give a job to a certain characters. There are 4 jobs available, and you can give them to your characters, and they will give a small buff to your nation. The clan or faction management system is bare bones. Like, all you can do is change the tax rate for your whole faction, and it's way more restrictive than Medieval 2, where you could set tax level per settlement. The tech tree was introduced in Empire and ported over to Shogun 2. I find this mechanic to actually be great. I mean, I think it's much better here than it was in Empire, so that's a win. Gives you campaign sense of progression and some replay value. If your campaign lasts long enough, you'll eventually unlock most of the tree. However, it allows the player to focus on diplomacy, farming, swords, bows. There's a wide variety of focuses for the player to choose from. The downside of this system is that in Shogun, each clan has a specialty unit. For example, the Shimasu have the sword samurai and the Chozokabe have the bow samurai. So for certain clans, it's optimal to go down the tech tree in certain directions. But this is really just a minor nitpick and nothing else. The campaign movement and design, I feel, is also really good in Shogun 2. And it's a good staple for any future Total Wars. The maps have natural choke points, some unlikely forest passes, plenty of good ground for ambushes, and still there's clear paths from settlement to settlement. It contrasts with the open plains of France or Russia in Empire Total War that would sometimes see the AI send several small stacks to raid the numerous buildings across the map. The more linear nature of Shogun's map meant they're easier to catch, and it encourages the player to defend the territory on the choke points. Admittedly, it isn't the perfect system to represent other parts of the world, such as the plains of Ukraine or the deserts of North Africa, but it works great in this game and in this setting. I love the map design and how you can have generalless armies as well. Your armies don't require a general to exist. Also of note is that units replenish over the end of the turn, not requiring them to be retrained. After all these years, I'm still not quite sure how to feel about this. It was introduced in Shogun 2 and it is a great quality of life improvement, and yet I feel that units being damaged in certain provinces simply isn't that big of a deal, especially on the later stages on the campaign. I think that the recruitment system of Medieval 2, where some units were limited, you could not just recruit endless amounts of a single unit, at least up to the mid game, that made every unit count, especially because you didn't get to just replenish them over time. You had to go into a settlement and then use those available units to replenish your existing units. So that was a very interesting conundrum that they had there, and Shogun 2 kind of removes that out of the equation, especially when you have high replenishment per turn. At the mid game to the late game, you'll get that. It doesn't really matter anymore. Diplomacy isn't really a concern of Total War. It wasn't until perhaps Three Kingdoms anyway. After playing Three Kingdoms, any Total War game's diplomacy seems completely random and an afterthought, really. I mean, I know it is Total War, but still, I mean, I think diplomacy should play a big role in these games so that the player can choose who to be at war with and all of that, you know, to make you think strategically about the factions around you, really. You know, Rome 2 did take a lot of the randomness out of diplomacy, but still the AI will declare on you because they're just greedy for land, and there's literally no other reason for the AI to go to war with you other than you're the player, screw you, I'm gonna take your lands, and that's essentially it. You know, diplomacy really sucks in Shogun 2, especially in higher difficulties, and you know, I will extend this criticism to Rome 1 and Medieval 2. The AI is exactly the same, and in fact I think that based on your difficulty, the game actually requires the player to be at war with a certain number of factions at any given moment, so if you're not, they will declare on you just because. Right, so you know, it's just bad. I think diplomacy is just bad. I mean, it's just an afterthought, and you know, screw it. The realm divide, and this is the last category, it's the realm divide, is where everyone declares war on you, you know, and that's it. As you conquer territories or get vassals, you know, no one really gets vassals because, I mean, I do. I actually do get vassals, and this is just, I mean, I'm just being a joke, but vassals are kind of bipolar, okay? So they're like a double-edged sword. It's really good to have them at some point, but you better be prepared for them to just betray you, because most of them will, especially if they don't like you. But you will essentially gain realm divide points as you conquer provinces and get vassals, and once you reach a certain number of points, which is called the reputation, the realm divide actually happens. So if you're lucky, a couple of allies will stick by your side, but if you're not lucky, well, then good luck to you, because you'll need it, and you're gonna need also really good maneuvering skills as well, because you'll essentially have all remaining factions declare war on you. That's it. It is a really nice game challenge if you're so inclined for proper Total War, but I don't think it was the best way to portray the divide, and I wish that at the very least allies and vassals would have been more likely to stick with you, because you might go a full campaign just nurturing those relationships with vassals and with allies, and then in a single turn everyone just goes ahead and says, fuck you, I don't care about all you did for us, you suck. So yeah, there is that. If I have to summarize all I've said about Shogun 2, is that the campaign is somewhat bare bones and frustrating at times, and you know, there's little actions really that the player will do other than build, attack, change taxes, and level up characters, maybe do some diplomacy here and there, but it won't really matter because when you trigger the realm divide, everyone will attack you, right? But does Shogun 2's campaign really suck? No, somehow it just works. Shogun 2 isn't only the campaign, and that is where this game really shines. As you level up your castles, you will have grander siege maps on layered castle walls. As you gain new technology, you unlock new fearsome units that will shred your enemies. As you level up your characters, you'll unlock night battles or make your army heroically stand its ground against insurmountable odds. The excellent, fast-paced, high-octane, adrenaline-rushing battles tie into your actions on the campaign to make every building, tech, unit, and character matter. The campaign works as a simple and yet effective staging ground for what Shogun 2 does best: the battles. And despite all of my criticisms on these different game mechanics, it's easy to see how the simple and clean approach to each of them has made something greater than the sum of its parts. And it's only possible to really enjoy Shogun's mechanics when you factor in the battles. They are brilliantly executed in Shogun 2. Morale, terrain, and fatigue are extremely important, and it offers a player with tons of opportunities to secure a victory even in the most unlikely situations. I think that Creative Assembly has been trying to give each faction its own playstyle, with forgetting that it is not 100 different mechanics that make for a great Total War game. It's the few mechanics that allow for 100 different strategies, all the while seamlessly tying your battles, that really make for a great Total War game. It doesn't mean I wouldn't like more depth, but I feel it's time to go back to the basics and focus on what Total War is really all about. What do you guys think about this issue here? Let me know in the comments below. I have been Wolf, and I'll see you next time.